Welcome back to our GCP-Mindset channel. Today we present our next topic from our webinars, Data Matters. Stay tuned.
About some aspects as to why the right data acquisition method is essential for a clinical trial conduct, and where the need and benefit within clinical trials for classical data management is to move toward data science. And last but not least, to summarize also the benefits of a tailored database for specific trial needs with some examples of our experience in the past. Sure, all those topics are quite connected since, as said, data matters. And it's also the sole foundation, the building the sole foundation, for any trial evaluation. Let's step into the agenda. Let me have a closer look in our past and the development in our industry. 25 years ago, in the time where mobile phones were not common, clinical research was largely one-dimensional. We used mainly paper-based processing for our trial data. The patient entered a study were assumed to follow one straight line path to completion. And even like the move to the eCRF to an electronic case report form, reducing our paper processes, the system itself was still designed with this simplicity in mind. What I mean, we have one data source, mainly the site-generated data, and one data collection tool, the case report form, or in this case, the electronic case report form. This was the area of a one-size-fits-all system, means a predictable simplicity of our trials. And we have seen that the age of paper-based processes, it's really reaching near extinction now, thank God in my eyes. And with the accomplished move from paper to eCRF, this is really completed in this day. Nowadays, we see that the centricity of a traditional EDC is in rapid decline. The survey of the Society of Clinical Data Managers already in 2018 just said that 70% of the companies said that their volume of data is from non-EDC data sources. That means we have an explosion of data sources and volumes. Means our data sources are now growing exponentially. They are not limited anymore. And it enables biopharma to generate richer and more complementary intelligence. Beyond traditional EDCs, we now are able to harnessing data from electronic health records, wearable sensors, electronic clinical outcome assessments, electronic patient-reported outcomes and diaries, biomarkers, and genomic informations. Also, digital imaging is on the rising, and specializing central labs are more common nowadays. By all those data sources, the traditional EDC is becoming one of many data capture modalities. The need to conduct data sources directly from patients is already leading to a rapid adoption of electronic clinical outcome assessments, wearables, sensors, and other ESUS solutions that are collecting data directly from the patient. All this fueled sure by the pandemic and the move to decentralized trials nowadays. So let's focus a bit on the evolution of clinical trial research practice and supporting regulations, as well as the massive advances in technologies. They have fundamentally changed what clinical data is. And it looks like a cloud of data. And in this cloud of data, even if regulated, there are 5 areas where this explosion of data has an effect on. Those need to be unlocked before we can harness the full potential of this data in clinical trials. Let me dig in the next few slides a bit into them and their challenges. The Society of Clinical Data Management, they call them the new 5 V's: volume, variety, velocity, veracity, and value. And the first 2 of them, in my eyes, have the highest operational impact. So let's come into volume and one of the examples I promised. Using, for example, a wearable to record a patient pulse as example, pictures this explosion of data volume quite nicely. This efficiently moves from a few data points recorded per eCRF at patient visits, indicated in yellow in this graph, to more than 10,000 of data points generated per patient per week in blue. With this incredible increase in data volume, you will need to define what really needs to be collected to support the protocol hypothesis by a so-called quality by design versus all data that can be generated through such new technologies. Sure, not all data generated by devices may be useful for statistical or further explanatory analysis. In the given examples of this wearable for pulse, I would consider retaining the millions of data points as an e-source while only retrieving data summaries at regular intervals, example per hour or per day, per week, for the statistical analysis. Another example of the data explosion and the expansion is the rapid increase in focus on well-being for us as humans, and the array of passive data sources. An example, all the available health apps. Sure, currently we are from a regulatory point of view, not there to connect directly to them and use the data in clinical trials, but I'm sure this will come, since neglecting such a high potential of data source makes no sense for us in the future. According to Statistica, I recently read, there were over 50,000 healthcare apps available in Google Play Store only in Q1 2021, with every day adding a new one. This, with the billion of smartphone users, generates a high potential of data that could be acquired in the future for our trials. Let's move into the topic of variety, means the wide range of data sources and data formats. The integration of data from a wide range of sources and transform them into useful information can be quite challenging. Integrating, managing, interpreting new data types such as images, videos, genomics, sequencing information from sensors and wearables, as in my first example, as well as connecting to electronic health records of university and clinics, requires new data technology strategies and questions, furthermore, the traditional EDC system. The key question is, how can we easily gather data from those independent systems to centrally use the data for trial evaluations? This is where the so-called application programming interface, short called API, comes into play. Simply said, it's a connection method of independent systems to exchange data. Nowadays, more and more systems use this API, but it's not common for all. So one needs to evaluate systems according to their data accessing point. And nowadays, it's possible in this regard to connect systems together, to use the whole potential of all different data sources available. The classical one, like eCRFs, monitoring reports, central labs, as well as the newer horizon, the clinical outcomes recorded by a patient directly, as well as the new sources that come into play, sensors, wearables, as well as electronic health records. Data variety is associated with the key attributes of data integrity and partially the ALCOA principle. You may all have known or heard of them. Sure, also the joint paper by the FDA and the MHRA on the topics underlines it. I would just say that, sure, it's being critical in the world of e-source and real-world data, where data can rarely be corrected later on, and where anonymization is increasingly challenging and critical with regarding to data protection. Since, sure, these needs and security measures needs to be addressed. I think here the focus is most important on quality by design. Since an example for ePro systems, those are built with the security and the ECOA principle in mind, and its data is guaranteed to be controlled by its owner only. Thus, by the patient best using their own smartphones, and any change to any documented entry by them is stored in an unalterable in the audit trail. But I already having seen really poorly designed questionnaires that resulted in unambiguous data later on, putting a patient-reported outcome-driven endpoint at risk, and by this, the whole study resulting in a failure of a trial. The last of the 5 V's is the value, to leveraging the full potential of the data we have, and we must look beyond its original purpose. What I mean is, during a clinical trial, we collect data to validate the hypothesis of the protocol and ultimately obtain market authorization. Once normally those data sets have been locked and used for the regulatory purposes, companies only use them for this purpose. However, to unleash the whole full potential of clinical trial data and the obtained data that we already have in clinical trials, we can begin to reuse these clinical trial data sets in new ways, including creating synthetic arms, as also to identify trends within meta-analysis between trials, or even if we think on the conduct of the trial, also to boost in compliance in the future by checking audit trails of a system, of a trial run in the past, and you can see where compliance issue occurred to improve the compliance in the future. One of the example of the value is, for example, to also ensure the local German requirement for a timely review of CRF data. There in Germany, it's a challenging topic since globally, sure, regulations at the ICH E3 generates quite a lot of attention, and we all know good clinical practice defines our foundation principles. While these less visible local regulations might still have significant impact to activities with risk of local inspection findings in global studies. One of the examples is, as I mentioned, the German requirement for a timely review of e-CRF data by a medical qualified personnel, and the endorsement of the data by the primary investigator at regular time points. We do not intend to enforce it in multinational trials to all countries, since that was overburden the PIs of other countries, but rather we can use it to report compliance issues for German investigators to CRAs to review the attested signatures in, for example, e-CRFs, freeing the CRAs to manually checking on this review and enforcing not fitting processing on other country investigators. By this, we can use the metadata of our trial data to accomplish also further things apart from the value for the sole application for the regulatory authorities. Okay, let's summarize a little bit in this point. The vast amount of data and the wide range of data sources requires the use of a versatile open system where data integration is the key. And in my eyes, this should be the focus of a system assessment in the future. So a central platform and needing to meet two primary objectives. It needs to have a diverse data integration and interoperability. What that means is data will be integrated from any source, shall be EDC, eCore, eProa, eConsent, wearables, EHRs, sensors, or whatever data source you can imagine, and maintained in a central repository. And then data managers and the clinical operations team can use the single tool to map, clean, and consolidating data. Sure, still queries need to be returned if possible to the clinical staff and the site staff at hand to be resolved, but the clinical team will be able to use the centrally data to apply, for example, remote and risk-based monitoring methods on the full data, and not only as most currently used on eCRF data only. The best option for such data methods is then also to be exported in industry standards, for example, SCTM formats for statistical analysis to benefit from a standardization of data formats. The ultimate goal hereby is of a centralized environment to achieve a significant evidence efficiency in the overall trial conduct. Means fast setups, less data cleaning effort, faster clean data, and reduced data reconciliation costs. Sure, it also comes with reduced source data verification need, since a lot of data is directly e-source and by this not requiring it to be source data verified. Such a purpose-built platform to aggregating data, clean and normalized data was previously seen in the industry as some kind of luxury, but is currently recognized and appreciated now and should be fundamental nowadays.
Thank you for your participation. The next part of our web seminar will be presented in the next week. Don't forget to subscribe, and goodbye.